Law of cycles in operation. Cycles are natural functions and major expressions of the law of thought. They arise from the operations of thought and are revealed by the comings and goings of thought. Thoughts provide the environment for activities and relationships to happen. Thoughts result in a sphere of influence for opening and closing possibilities. Within that sphere of influence, the cycle of a thought leads to progression and/or resolution. This is also known as evolution and extinction. Events happen within the multiplicity of cycles coming together and spinning away from each other. Ideally, with each cycle of a thought, more balance is achieved, which ultimately results in the dissolving of that cycle. Revealed in humanity. As human beings, we operate through cycles such as waking and sleeping, experiencing patterns in relationships, and scheduling life through the 7-day work week. Cycles can be an accessible entry point into the operations of being because noticing a cycle with its subtleties and distinctions can promote conscious awareness. From our human perspective, there are two types of cycles. The first is the spiral, and the second is the circle. The difference between them is that only the spiral allows for progression. A circle is a repetitive pattern that takes you back to where you began. The pattern repeats without the possibility of advancing to another level. The circle represents nature, while the spiral represents going further toward or away from awareness of consciousness. For example, the orbits of the planets around the sun are elongated circles and not spirals. Nature is an expression of being, and limited forms of spirals can be observed in the physical world, such as in a nautilus shell. When we look into nature enough, we find the opportunity to connect to the consciousness there. For example, contemplating spirals in seashells, pine cones, or flowers can lead to connecting with and experiencing being, which is consciousness in action. Spirals can be a pathway to a deeper understanding of the operations of the eternal. Downward spirals are pathways of learning. Ascending spirals provide openings, while descending spirals lead to closings. If you find yourself in a downward spiral, stop digging. This means find something that will stop and reverse the cycle, such as make it to the next waypoint on the upward spiral. Examples of downward spirals in nature include whirlpools and tornadoes, which are metaphors for depression and emotional upheaval. Cycles are contingent on timing. Therefore, cycles can reveal both proper timing and the state of being out of sync. Timing presents different possibilities within relationships contingent on time, place, and condition. Time is how people measure changes in relationships. Mistiming happens when resources are not available, when they are expected to be. For example, when there is less rain than normal, the cycle of plant growth is affected. Wisdom is knowing when to circle and when to spiral. One example of a circle in operation is the symbol of a serpent swallowing its tail. Some cultures have mastered the circle, but not the spiral. This provides for much stability, but hinders creativity and advancement, which ultimately leads to downfall and disintegration. When people stay in a circle too long, they are prone to stagnation. The basic structure of ontology, which is effective being, helps us break out of circles into progression. For example, when we learn to make effective requests, we learn to think in ways that lead to progression. As another example, you can train your thinking by discerning which laws of being most apply in a situation. Thoughts become stronger when a person or group focuses attention on them, and they become weaker when that attention wanes. Attention affects the cycle of thoughts and all the cycles that originate and derive from those thoughts. For example, physical senses are biological cycles of stimulation that involves receiving input, processing that input, integrating the information, and then turning attention elsewhere. Similarly, cycles are evident in relationships, which are profoundly affected by the attention and lack of attention given and received. Cycles operate in both the world of appearances and the world of consciousness. Contained in the isness of being are cycles such as taking form as appearances and then retreating and dissolving. In other words, consciousness cycles as being. It appears and disappears as an existence. Studying laws of being enhances our understanding of cycles and how they produce everything about our lives. Antithesis. The opposite of a cycle is an arc, or a fragment of a circle. When a circle is incomplete, there is no way to flow or move through it without first making a connection. Prejudice is a form of being stuck in a snippet of a circle. Sometimes it feels safe and reassuring for life to be predictable. However, complacency is contrary to progress, and progress is the nature of life. New growth occurs even in and after decay. Application: how to navigate life within cycles. To apply the law of cycles, first be aware that cycles exist, not just in the physical realm, such as day and night, but also in the being realm, such as when thoughts cycle from active to passive and back again. The second step is to understand how cycles work, so that you come into alignment with their proper operation. As wisdom from the Bible states, "For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted." When cycles present themselves, surrender what is yours to surrender so that you continue to follow divine guidance and progress in consciousness. Opposing the natural rhythm of cycles often results in frustration. Another important point about cycles is to know what initiates them. Cycles can remain dormant until activated. For example, actions in a relationship can be routine until one or both people feel a strong emotion. In nature, the increase in sunlight warms the soil and provides energy for plants to grow. It is effective to be able to distinguish how you are operating. Are you spiraling or are you circling? People sometimes pursue patterns in their practices that become habits. They neglect to ask, do I need to take on new practices to keep progressing? When you grow tired of repeating circles, you choose to take a new path. You learn a new skill or make a change. You create the opportunity for new thoughts to develop and new pathways to be revealed. This affects how you are connected to the world, which is why change can be disturbing. Circles have their place. There is a reason why masters meditate and practice rituals and patterns. Rituals provide stability and opportunities for specific thinking. Rituals are circles that can lead to spirals and therefore to progression. When people are not aware of behavioral circles, they can get caught in them. They repeat the pattern until they think about how to break out of the circle. When people are caught in circular thoughts, they keep conversations going and return to where they started. They argue instead of actually progressing into problem solving. History repeats until people complete and release the thoughts that are generating the conditions. People are enmeshed in many cycles. Sometimes they get excited about trying something new without thinking about the disturbances that will result. To live effectively, we need a proper balance of circling and spiraling. For example, for a healthy relationship, maintain some stability and introduce some newness.